I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're tackling one of the biggest education challenges: why so many people struggle with math. My guest, Alexander Harvey Firestone, and he is here to change the way you think about numbers with his groundbreaking book, Understanding the Language of Mathematics. If you've ever felt frustrated by math, this is a book that just might make you see it in a whole new light. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below this interview. And be sure to download the Spotlight Network TV app streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Alexander, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
I'm very pleased to be here, so thank you very much.
Great to have you on the show. What inspired you to write Understanding the Language of Mathematics?
Well, I was very fortunate to have a mother or parents who believed in education. We came from a very poor background. It was in England. I was born just before the war. And so I learned at a very early age how important it was to have understanding and to be responsible. And so because of that sort of background, I realized how important education was. Life is one big problem. As soon as you solve one problem, you're ready for the next. Yeah. And you begin to realize that each problem that you solve is only preparing you for the next problem. And so that was the beginning. And then, of course, I went to school. This was in England. I was quite happy going to school. But at the age of 10, we immigrated to the United States. And that was an entirely different system. And I really did not understand what was going on, especially in mathematics. And yet I was very good at school. And it was because we went into algebra. And at that time, I didn't have a clue what algebra was. It was so different than numbers. And I remember I'd go home and I'd do my homework and I'd come back the next day and everything would be wrong. And the class would, of course, laugh at me. And this went on and this went on. And then one day I came in and I had one problem that was correct. And once I had a problem that was correct, I could then start analyzing that and realizing what my mistake was. I've never looked backwards since that time. So that was how I started, as being brought up in a very poor family, working very hard, but being very responsible.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. You got lost a little bit when it came to algebra. For me, when I got to geometry, that's when I was lost. When they started talking about theorems and so forth, it just wasn't explained well to me at the time. Why do you think math is so widely disliked and widely misunderstood?
Well, it's unfortunate that we do not, well, we say it with our lips that mathematics is a language, but we don't realize that if you're working with a language, it must revolve around understanding and, comprehension. Well, mathematics is the only language in the world which is taught without comprehension and understanding. And that is really the gist of the whole problem. We are using two languages, but we're not bilingual. Yeah. If you were walking down the street and you met a new person and you wanted to start a conversation, and it turns out he was French, but he can't speak any English, and you can't speak any French. Yeah. So what sort of a conversation would you have? You're not bilingual. Well, that is the problem with mathematics. You're very good in English, but you don't have a clue what mathematics is. Yeah. And so they use a language which is hodgepodge. One symbol can have a lot of meanings. One word can have 8 or more meanings. And a sentence can have thousands of meanings. And mathematics is a language. One symbol, only one meaning. One word, only one meaning. One sentence, only one meaning. Well, how can you accurately translate from English to mathematics when you're going from a hodgepodge to something which is very specific?
Do you think people's brains are either wired towards language or wired towards mathematics? Do you think that some people are more adept at arithmetic and not as skilled in language. What are your thoughts on the whole left-right brain theory?
If we weren't skilled in logical thinking, we would have not survived as a human race.
True.
Life is one big problem.
Mm.
And so I've said that you have one problem after the next problem. There are three words that you have to come to mind right away if you have a problem to solve. And if you don't have these three words, you're not going to be very efficient.
Mm.
Can you do anything in life if they don't tell you what they want you to do? Of course not. If you don't know what to do, you can't even start. Then you have the second word. Not only do you need to know what to do, you need to know how to do it. But then you need the third word, and that's the why are you doing it? Because it's not how much effort you put into a task, it is effort in the right direction. Well, in mathematics, the what is called the concept. And the good news is the concept always tells you what to do. The how is the rule, and the rule always tells you how to do it. And they're always the shortest string of information that carries the understanding. It's not how much effort you put in the task, effort in the right direction. So when you decide to use a particular concept, the first thing that comes to mind, why are you using that concept? What did you expect to achieve? Did you achieve what you expected? If you did, then it's on to how to do it. So what rule did you choose? Why did you choose that rule? What did you expect to achieve? Did you achieve what you expected? Well, you're going forward. Now, the brain works very quickly, and those three things whip through your mind, bang, just like lightning. You don't know a single concept. If I were to ask you something as simple as addition, you would say add, but that's an English word. The brain doesn't know what that means, because the first thing it would think of is add what? But you didn't tell it. So what is add in mathematics? Make groups of like things. So right away, the moment you see that symbol, the brain knows you're making groups of like things. So lickety-split, it'll start putting all the like things together, spitting answers at you, and in your subconscious, you're listening to those answers, and when the right one comes along, bang, that's it. But how do you make a group of like things? It's obvious. You only put like things together. And that's what mathematics is all about. It's a problem-solving, logical, scientific language. So when you say we're not wired for that, well, that's the way the brain works.
Yeah.
And so if mathematics is this problem-solving, logical, scientific language, then we need to be putting more effort into it. Because the better you are at solving your everyday problems, the happier you're going to be, the more successful you're going to be.
Exactly. Like you said, life is a series of problems. Once you solve one, another one's coming up. So it is great advice indeed. Let's talk about the problem of educators and schools. How do they get this message? How do they reform their instruction so students can embrace math rather than fear math?
Now, that is the problem. We are really structured in how we teach mathematics. A lot of money goes into education. We need some method to prove to the public that our money is not being lost and that we're educating children. So in mathematics, we decide what's important. Well, obviously, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and the rest of it. So how do we test this out so the public can see that they're achieving? We pick very simple problems, not necessarily the ones you'll meet out of the classroom, and they will teach you the procedure for solving that particular problem. And you very soon learn that you're going to have a test, and on that test, those problems that you've been learning in the classroom and in your homework is going to be on the test. And so what we're doing now is only training children to pass a test so that we can say they've got an excellent result compare that result with other classes throughout the world, and then say they're doing well or they're not doing well. But that is not what mathematics is all about. It's learning to think logically, scientifically, and we're not doing that. And you can't do that as a teacher because you're now judged on how successful the children are. And how are we judging success? By these tests we have.
Understood. And, go ahead.
And one thing that I remember, as things have moved along, I started teaching a long time ago. Yeah. And you had a lot of freedom to teach. And if you were fortunate to have a teacher who had life skills, he had a very good idea about what things you should know and what things you should understand. We're not teaching understanding today. We're only teaching memorizing a specific problem so that you do well on the test. Excuse me, I just have a drink.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. It is fascinating stuff. I do feel the way that mathematics is taught has to be reinvented. I do think the pressure for testing grades needs to be eliminated. And the teachers will feel less pressure. The students will feel less pressure. And then there'll be an environment where they can thrive, right?
Well, there is just too much, paperwork that goes on.
Yeah.
For example, I said, how do we give this mathematics so it has understanding? The very first thing they learn at school is the alphabet. Now, I don't know if you remember the alphabet when you first learned it. Mm-hmm. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We all remember that song.
Yeah.
Well, as a child, because you're learning how to think, the first question you'll ask the teacher is, why do we have to learn this? Mm-hmm. And the teacher will say, well, it's very important that you know how to pronounce the letters because the words are made up of letters. And by learning the alphabet, you'll be able to pronounce the word. All right, I believe the teacher. So I learn my A, B, C, and so on. Mm-hmm. So then eventually the teacher is going to write on the board the first word. C-A-T. Got it. Mm-hmm. And I raise my hand to answer the question. Kate. Oh, no, that's wrong. It's cat. And I think, I'm sure I was told it made the sound A, C-A-T, Kate. No, when you have it in the word, it sounded differently. Well, why didn't I learn it differently? And so this is what happens in school. You don't understand the whole process. And we think by learning one little tiny thing, you know the law. Well, it doesn't work that way. It gets you into a lot of trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you believe if it's taught differently, math could be a student's favorite subject?
It would be your favorite subject. Yeah. And the reason it's your favorite subject, it's helping you to resolve your everyday problems. It's having you look at things from a different aspect, from a different direction. And this is how all these inventions we have, it's not doing things the same old way, looking at it, being able to put your ideas together in a different way, an organized, logical way, to give a new result. And then having the confidence to put new idea with new idea to come up with the unthinkable. And it's not that difficult to do that. Yeah. Because once you understand what you're doing, it's exciting to see what you can do with your intellect. You watch how children are on the sports field. In fact, that's how I started teaching. My first job was in the girls' high school, and that was in Australia. Well, I left the United States as a research physicist, working with deep space probes and doing things which hadn't been done before. I could hardly wait to get to work. It was so exciting. And then I realized I was ready to go teaching. And where did I get my first job? In a girls' school. Well, in those days, women's place was in the home. Mm-hmm. What would girls want to do mathematics and physics for? Now, fortunately for me, my second day, I had to supervise them in sports. And they tried so hard in sports, I thought if they can put that much energy in their sports, they can do the same thing with their intellect. Yeah. And I had a fantastic time, and their children had a fantastic time. And when you were talking about you had difficulty with geometry and trigonometry and works, I'd come into the classroom and say, today we're going to have a mystery thriller. we're going to catch two triangles in the act of being congruent. And we have a fantastic time.
Yeah.
And those kids excelled. And it was such a marvelous time. You walk in the street and parents would stop you and talk about their children coming home and talking about mathematics. And when you usually ask your child, what have they learned today? Nothing. Shortly, you remember it. Something? No, nothing. Well, children come home, the first thing they want to show mom and dad is what they can do with their intellect, because they didn't realize they can think. But you have to be trained how to think. And that's what mathematics does. It's not the numbers, that's only a small part of mathematics. The real value of mathematics is learning to put ideas together in an organized, logical manner to come up with a new idea, to be able to recognize patterns, and then being able to modify that pattern for a brand new situation. And the brain is excellent at doing that. So I hope that answers the question about
absolutely. Absolutely.
mathematics.
Yeah, without a doubt. Tell us a little bit about your education in career. Your first job was working at that all-girls school. Tell us a little bit about your work.
I was working at Cremorne Girls High School, and that was in New South Wales in Sydney. And as I said before, it was always a new challenge when I went into the classroom. And that's what the students look forward to. They wanted to come into the classroom and learn things that are going to help them for outside the classroom, and to be able to start noticing things. I mean, I can remember, I'll go back from that to going into primary school. I've also worked in primary school. And I took my children on a field trip. Well, it turned out it was the time of the year when birds are laying nests and going to have babies. So I had them all lay down in the grass, watching the field. And once they saw that a bird was returning to a particular spot, I'd take them to that particular spot and have them take a look. Now, of course, they wanted to touch things, but I wouldn't let them touch them. I wonder, well, how many eggs are in the nest? What do the eggs look like? Do you think all birds' nests are the same? How is it made, that nest? And then I would take them back and would watch again. And when I come back to school and tell them what I did, oh, I've got it all wrong. I mustn't interfere with their thinking or what they want to do. I should let them discover things for themselves. Well, I'll tell you what the boys would discover, what a fantastic projectile that egg makes, and what a fantastic pattern it makes when it splatters. And I was told I was trying to clone them like myself. And I thought, well, is that a bad thing? But anyway, that's what happens when you start trying to do things differently. When you do things differently in the classroom, and it's not the way the system wants you to teach, you are in deep trouble. So it's a fine red line that I'm crossing all the time. But even myself, I can't cross it very far. And they're making it more and more difficult to do exactly the way it's supposed to be taught. I remember when we had the national exams, and the qualification authority came up to me and told me we're having a problem here. And I said, well, what's the problem? They said, well, your students are answering the problem 8 different ways. We only know how to do it one way. And the people who are marking the papers don't know what to do. I said, well, aren't we teaching them how to think so they can look outside the square? Not for marking the test, it isn't. So you're supposed to teach the mathematics problem a specific way, so when we have these people who come in to do the marking, they can follow step 1, they've done that, step 2, they've done that, step 3, that's not mathematics, that's not thinking. You should be pleased that they've got 8 different ways of solving the same problem. But I'm afraid you're going to be pushing the system if you do that.
Yeah. Seems like anytime you buck the system, anytime you want to chart a new course, anytime you want to color outside of the lines, you've got the hierarchy, you've got the administration, you've got the overlords right down on your neck, right?
And it's not teaching them in the classroom. Yeah. Many of the things that you do in the classroom, you can have a primary school child do. Taking the roll, for example. Why does the teacher have to spend all of their time taking the roll every day and making sure everything's checked when you could have an administrative person do that? When I had my own schools, I never had my teachers doing things like that. They knew when they came to the classroom, they were there to be helping the students. And so everything they did must have a reason and a purpose. But getting back to school, I can give another example.
Sure.
We've gone through the alphabet, and so now we turn to read and write. So what direction do you go when you read and write?
Left to right.
Left to right, always.
If I'm
In
scanning
English,
it, sometimes I'll go like this. If I'm doing like a keyword search, I'll go back and forth.
well,
But
in
that's something I
English,
adopted on my own.
yes, well, in English, you go from left to right.
Yeah.
It's not always.
Yeah.
And when people say, oh, that's not true, well, I could give a perfect example here. Can you read that? Just the top. This isn't.
Looks
The
like
dollar
$5 at the
five.
top.
Yes, you've got a dollar symbol and a 5. How would you read that?
Well, it's backwards, but I would read it still at $5.
Did you read left to right?
Nope.
You went right to left.
Right to left, exactly.
And I can give you a lot of examples where the brain, if it sees it's more logical and it makes more sense to go right to left, you'll start off left to right, and then bang, you'll immediately go right to left. And
Yeah.
it does it without any hesitation.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to teach your children to do. Everything must make sense. There must be a good reason behind your thinking, your feeling, and your behavior.
Yeah.
And that good reason should be based on the virtues: honesty, kindness, thoughtfulness, compassion, trustworthy, hard work, loyalty. That's what real mathematics does, is it makes sure you're learning how to think, but always for the right reason. You'd think any country would want that sort of mathematics.
Yeah.
But not only are you learning to think, but it is always for the right reason, to help the person, to help society.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. You're challenging the system again.
Exactly. I think the system probably is in its full throttle position most at school. I found in my life that of all of the people who want to stifle creativity and stifle opposing voices, nowhere is that greater than in a school setting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that teaching is the most finest profession to have.
I agree, but it's the administrators sometimes that are very so rule oriented, they kind of stifle even what the teachers are trying to do, right?
Well, they're in the same situation as the teacher. If they don't follow the rules exactly, they lose their jobs.
Hmm.
And then you start not caring whether it's right or wrong anymore. It's just making sure that you're following the system.
Yeah.
So we're not bringing up people who can think and reason for the right reason. We're bringing up zombies, you might say, who just do as they're told without thinking. And so we learn to manipulate people. And there's all sorts of books out there to read how you can manipulate people. That's not what life is all about.
Yeah.
When you're having a discussion, you're trying to find out the truth of the matter, not trying to win an argument. But that seems to be what we need to go, winning an argument.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree 100%. Who is your book for? Is it for students struggling with math? Is it for educators? Is it for parents trying to help those children? Tell us a little bit about your book and how it will help future generations.
All right. This book is written in English, obviously, but English which translates accurately into mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
I gave a simple example of addition. When you see that symbol, you need to know what the concept is. What does that symbol tell you to do? Well, plus means make groups of like things. What is the rule for addition? Only put like things together. Now, that's common sense. The brain can understand that. And so you then realize that once you see that plus sign, you're looking for groups of like things and you're putting the like things together. So that means you don't have to learn addition for algebra. You don't need it for arithmetic. You don't need it for geometry or calculus or integration. Make groups of like things. And that's all you're doing whenever you see that plus symbol. If we have the minus sign, what does that mean? Oh, take away. Well, my son has two meanings. You're either taking away from what you owe or taking away from what you've got. And so when I come into a classroom, and usually it'll be university students even. Oh, they all know addition, subtraction, multiplication. So I'll put a subtraction problem on the board, and I'll have maybe 8 digits. And that alone makes it difficult as far as they're concerned. 8. I'll give them the problem to do. I'll have a volunteer come up, and I'll say, well, look, I'm sorry, that's not correct. And they can't believe it. They know how to subtract, but they didn't realize that in this problem, you're taking away from what you owe. So when you see that minus number on the bottom and it's bigger than the one on the top, then you have to put the larger number on the top, and you're taking away from that, and then you're left with how much you still owe. I can count on 2 hands from the thousands of students I've taught the number of times I've had a correct answer. And they are absolutely shocked. I've even seen them getting out their calculator to check. They don't understand what they're doing, but they have memorized the procedure that meant they got 100% on the test. So they must know how to do subtraction.
Yeah.
And that's
so much of it is route, so much of it is memorization, so little of it in many cases is understanding. The same's true in many subjects in school as well, don't you think? That we memorize the order of the presidents in the United States, for example, as opposed to their accomplishments, what the times were like during the presidencies and so forth.
Well, there's an example. I don't want to get into politics, but shouldn't the first thing be is what is a leader?
Yeah.
How
The
does a leader
context, right? The context is so important and sometimes absent. We have about 2 minutes left. Just wanted to ask you, what do you hope the folks at home get from your book when they read it?
When they read that book, I hope that what they will get, and they will get it because it's written in very simple English, that mathematics is a lifelong journey. That what you learn today is to help you to do better tomorrow. And what you learn tomorrow is helping you for the next day. You're learning, for example, that you solve problems with mental tools and material tools. We weren't born with those tools. And it's the parents' opportunity to start teaching children how to resolve their everyday little activities. And so you're asking them questions. And I was looking at a picture of a child with a cloth, and he was moving the cloth about. Just using the cloth, you can do so many things with the cloth. So the child can see, well, by golly, you can do a lot of things with this. And that's what they need to realize. But the book is written in such a manner that you will have no trouble understanding mathematics and realize there was no reason to have difficulty in mathematics. It's the way it's taught. And I'm not blaming the teachers. If they didn't teach the way they were supposed to teach, they would lose their jobs. And I won't tell you how many different schools I've been in. Not that the children didn't like what I was doing. You're not following the system.
Exactly. And if you buck the system, you get in trouble, right or wrong, unfortunately. This book is a real game changer for students of mathematics. And I think all of us are lifelong learners, and this will be a great help. It's called Understanding the Language of Mathematics. If you've ever felt frustrated by math, this is a book that'll help you see mathematics, arithmetic, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and the like in a whole new light. Alexandra, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Well, thank you very much. You spent just as much time as I did.
I appreciate your time, sir. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.
I hope you have a nice day.